Close your eyes. Listen, not to anything in particular, not straining toward a sound or searching for meaning in noise. Simply listen to whatever is present. Perhaps you hear the hum of something electrical nearby, a refrigerator, an air conditioning unit, the subtle vibration of modern life. Perhaps you hear traffic in the distance, muffled and indistinct. Perhaps you hear your own breathing, the quiet rhythm of air moving in and out, the most intimate sound there is. Now imagine that all of these sounds gradually fade, not abruptly. There's nothing jarring about this fading, but gently, like a tide receding from the shore. The electrical hum quiets, the distant traffic softens. Your breathing remains, but even that becomes less prominent, less noticed as the world around you becomes quieter and quieter still. Keep going. Let even your breathing fade into the background. What remains when all sound is gone? Not nothing, something else, something that has a quality, a presence, a texture of its own. This is silence, not the mere absence of sound, but something deeper, something that exists as a state unto itself, something that fills the spaces where sound once was with a quality that is, in its own way, as rich as any noise. This silence, this true, absolute, perfect silence, exists somewhere. Not on earth, where wind and water and living things and human activity create a constant, unbroken soundscape. Not in any room you've ever sat in, no matter how quiet it seemed. True silence exists beyond Earth's atmosphere, in the vast dark spaces between worlds, where no medium exists to carry vibration, where nothing can make noise no matter how violently it moves. Space is silent, profoundly, absolutely, eternally silent. This is the subject of our exploration tonight. We're going to contemplate the silence of space, what creates it, what it means, what happens in that silence, and what understanding it can do for the human mind seeking rest. We're going to travel from the noisy surface of Earth through the gradually quieting atmosphere into the perfect silence beyond, and we're going to discover that this silence isn't empty at all, but rather full of events, full of processes, full of beauty, all occurring without a single vibration reaching any ear. The paradox that will guide our journey is this: the universe is simultaneously the most violent and the most silent place imaginable. Explosions larger than our sun occur in perfect quiet. Galaxies collide without a whisper. Stars burn for billions of years in complete and utter silence. The most energetic events in existence produce no sound whatsoever. And somehow, contemplating this paradox, this coexistence of tremendous power and absolute quiet, creates not anxiety but peace. Why does silence calm us? This is partly a question of biology, of how our nervous systems evolved to respond to sound in its absence. And it's partly a question of psychology, of how our minds process the concept of quiet and what it means for our sense of safety and rest. And it's partly a question of philosophy, of what silence means in the context of a universe so vast and ancient that human noise seems, against that backdrop, almost inconceivably brief. We'll explore all of these dimensions tonight, but first, simply sit with this idea. The universe is silent. Right now, in this very moment, as you listen to these words, the vast majority of existence is utterly, perfectly, completely quiet. The space between stars, which constitutes almost all of the universe, contains no sound, has never contained sound, will never contain sound. Silence is not the exception in the cosmos, it's the rule. Sound is the anomaly, the brief interruption, the temporary deviation from the default state of things. There's something deeply reassuring about this perspective. We live in a world of noise, constant, demanding, often stressful noise. The beeping of devices, the roar of traffic, the endless chatter of information and communication and obligation. This noise fills our days and often invades our nights, preventing the deep rest our minds and bodies crave. We struggle against it, seek refuge from it, sometimes feel overwhelmed by it. But step back. Step far enough back and the noise disappears. Rise above the atmosphere just 100 kilometers, an insignificant distance on cosmic scales, and all of Earth's sound vanishes instantly. Not gradually, not over time, but in a single transition from medium to vacuum. One moment sound, the next silence, and the silence stretches in all directions, in all dimensions, for distances so vast that human comprehension struggles to encompass them. Tonight, we'll make that transition together. We'll leave the noise behind, ascend through the quieting atmosphere, cross the boundary into space, and explore what exists in the silence beyond. We'll witness cosmic events that would, if sound could travel, deafen us beyond recovery, and we'll experience them in perfect quiet, stripped of their drama, reduced to their pure visual essence, and we'll discover that silence isn't frightening, it isn't lonely or empty or void. It's peaceful in a way that goes beyond the mere absence of disturbance. It's peaceful because it represents the natural state of things, the default condition of the universe, the quiet that existed before the first sound was ever made and will persist after the last sound fades. Let this understanding begin to settle into you. You don't need to do anything with it yet. Don't try to analyze it or memorize it or apply it to your life. Simply let it exist in your awareness, like a quiet presence at the edge of your consciousness. The universe is silent. Most of reality is quiet. The noise you experience is local, temporary, and ultimately insignificant against the backdrop of cosmic quiet. Breathe slowly. Let each exhalation carry a little of the day's accumulated noise away. Let each inhalation bring a little of the universe's silence in. You're breathing in the same atmosphere that separates you from that vast cosmic quiet, the thin membrane of air that makes sound possible for you and impossible for everything beyond it. We'll begin our journey soon. We'll trace the physics of sound, understand why space is silent, explore what happens in that silence, and ultimately arrive at a place of deep cosmic quiet that exists whether we know about it or not. Whether we travel there or not, whether we understand it or not. It's there. It has always been there. And tonight we're going to visit. Rest now in this first moment of our exploration. Feel the noise of your day beginning to quiet. Feel the silence beginning to gather, like dusk gathering at the edges of the sky, patient and inevitable and peaceful. We have nowhere to hurry. The silence will wait for us, as it has waited for billions of years, as it will wait for billions more. Simply breathe, simply listen to the quiet that exists between sounds, and know that this quiet connects to something vast, something beyond atmosphere, beyond world, beyond anything noise has ever touched. We begin. To understand why space is silent, we must first understand what sound actually is. Not the word, not the concept, not the experience of hearing, but the physical phenomenon itself, the mechanism by which vibration travels from one place to another. Understanding this mechanism reveals precisely why silence must exist in space, why it's not merely likely but physically inevitable, as certain as gravity or the speed of light. Sound is a wave. Not a wave like light or radio signals, which can travel through vacuum, but a mechanical wave, a disturbance that travels by transferring energy from one piece of matter to the next, like a line of falling dominoes. Each domino doesn't travel itself, it simply falls into the next one, which falls into the next, and so on. The motion propagates, but the medium, the dominoes, or in sound's case the molecules, stays essentially in place. Imagine you're standing in a quiet room. The air around you is filled with molecules, tiny particles of nitrogen and oxygen and other gases moving constantly in random directions, colliding with each other billions of times per second. This molecular motion is thermal, caused by temperature, and it's entirely random, creating no pattern, no wave, no sound, just the chaotic dance of matter at the molecular level. Now someone across the room claps their hands. The clap creates a sudden calm. Pression of air. The molecules nearest the hands are pushed together, increasing their density and pressure in a small region of space. This compressed region pushes against the molecules next to it, which compress and push against their neighbors, and so on. The compression travels outward from the clap like a ripple spreading across a pond's surface when a stone is dropped in. But unlike a pond ripple, which is a single disturbance, a clap creates a rapid succession of compressions and rarefactions, regions of increased and decreased pressure, alternating rapidly. These pressure waves travel outward through the air at about 343 meters per second at room temperature, the speed of sound. When they reach your ear, the tiny membrane of your eardrum vibrates in response to the pressure changes, and your brain interprets this vibration as sound. The crucial point is this: the entire process requires a medium. Something must be present to compress, to transfer the energy from one molecule to the next. Air works, water works even better in some ways. Sound travels about 4 times faster in water than in air because water molecules are closer together and more efficiently transfer pressure from one to the next. Solid materials work too. Tap a metal rod and you'll hear the sound travel through the metal almost instantaneously. But what if there are no molecules at all? What if the space between two objects contains nothing? No air, no water, no solid, no gas, no matter of any kind. Then there is nothing to compress, nothing to transfer energy from one to the next, nothing to vibrate, nothing to carry the disturbance, nothing to propagate the wave. Sound cannot exist. Not because something is blocking it or absorbing it, but because the fundamental mechanism by which sound travels simply has no material to work with. Sound isn't being silenced in space. It simply cannot be born there, cannot exist there, cannot propagate there. The silence of space isn't a quality of space. It's the inevitable consequence of space being empty, and space is extraordinarily empty. The interplanetary medium, the space between planets in our solar system, contains roughly 5 to 10 particles per cubic centimeter. Compare this to air at sea level, which contains about 2.5 x 10 to the power of 19 molecules per cubic centimeter. Space contains roughly 2 to 5 quintillion times fewer particles than the air you're breathing right now. At such densities, particles travel enormous distances between collisions, sometimes kilometers, making meaningful pressure wave propagation utterly impossible. The interstellar medium, the space between stars, is even emptier. In the Milky Way, it might contain about 1 atom per cubic centimeter, though this varies enormously depending on location. In the densest molecular clouds where stars are forming, there might be millions of particles per cubic centimeter, still vanishingly thin by terrestrial standards. In the vast voids between spiral arms of the galaxy, the density might drop to a fraction of an atom per cubic centimeter. And the intergalactic medium, the space between galaxies, is the emptiest environment in the universe. Here the density might be as low as 1 atom per cubic meter. Not per cubic centimeter, per cubic meter. Imagine a box 1 meter on each side, large enough to stand inside. In the intergalactic medium, that entire box might contain a single atom, or it might contain none at all. This is the void, the ultimate emptiness, the space where silence is most absolute. This emptiness creates a fascinating paradox that early astronomers debated for centuries. If space is silent, and we observe violent events occurring in space, supernovae, planetary collisions, solar flares, does that mean these events are truly silent? Or does it simply mean we can't hear them from here? The answer, of course, is the former. The events themselves produce no sound. There's nothing around them to vibrate, nothing to carry pressure waves, nothing to propagate the disturbance outward. The supernova explodes in silence. The explosion itself is soundless. This was genuinely puzzling to early scientists grappling with the nature of sound and space. For much of history, many believed that space contained some medium, an ether, through which light and possibly sound could travel. It wasn't until experiments in the 19th century, particularly the famous Michelson-Morley experiment of 1887, demonstrated that no such medium existed, that the vacuum of space was accepted as truly empty. And with that acceptance came the understanding that space must be silent. The speed difference between light and sound on Earth gives us an intuitive understanding of how disconnected these two phenomena are. Light travels at approximately 300,000 kilometers per second. Sound travels at 0.343 kilometers per second in air. Light is roughly 1,000,000 times faster than sound. This is why you see lightning flash almost instantly but hear thunder seconds later. The light arrives almost immediately while the sound takes time to travel. In space, light still travels at 300,000 kilometers per second. But sound speed becomes meaningless because sound doesn't travel at all. There is no sound speed in a vacuum because there is no sound. Light from a distant star reaches your eye after traveling for years or centuries or millennia. Sound from that same star will never reach you. The light carries the story of what happened. The sound carries nothing because there is nothing to carry. Consider what this means for specific events. When a star explodes as a supernova, the explosion releases more energy in seconds than our sun will produce in its entire 10 billion-year lifetime. The shock wave from the explosion tears through the surrounding gas and dust at thousands of kilometers per second. If you were close enough that the light reached you in seconds, you would see the explosion brilliantly, spectacularly, the brightest event in the sky. And you would hear absolutely nothing. The silence would be perfect, complete, undisturbed by the most energetic event in the known universe. This disconnection between sight and sound in space creates a strange and peaceful cognitive experience. We're accustomed to pairing visual events with sounds, lightning with thunder, fireworks with explosions, a falling tree with a crash. Our brains expect sound to accompany dramatic visual events. When we contemplate dramatic events occurring in perfect silence, our minds initially resist. It feels incomplete, as if something is missing. But gradually the incompleteness becomes completeness. The silence fills in where sound would be, and it fills it with peace. The dramatic event, stripped of its auditory drama, becomes something else. Something quieter in emotional impact, something more contemplative, something that invites observation rather than reaction. The supernova becomes beautiful rather than terrifying. The collision becomes graceful rather than violent. Silence transforms perception, softening the sharp edges of cosmic violence into something approaching serenity. There's also a philosophical dimension to sound's requirement for medium. Sound needs matter. Matter is temporary. It formed shortly after the Big Bang and will eventually dissipate as the universe expands and cools toward heat death. Before the Big Bang, there was no matter, and therefore no possibility of sound. After the universe's eventual end, matter will be gone, and sound will end with it. Sound exists only during the brief window when matter exists, a window that, on cosmic timescales, is vanishingly short. Silence, by contrast, is eternal. It existed before the Big Bang when there was nothing to make sound. It will exist after the universe's heat death when there is again nothing to make sound. Silence is the universe's default state, its beginning and its ending. The quiet that bookends the brief cosmic symphony of matter and energy rests now in this understanding. Sound requires something. Silence requires nothing. Sound is temporary. Silence is eternal. The noise that fills your days exists only because you happen to live on a planet with an atmosphere during a brief period when matter exists and vibrates and makes waves. Step beyond that atmosphere, just slightly beyond, the noise ends forever. Let this knowledge bring comfort. The noise is not the fundamental state of things. It's an interruption, a brief deviation, a local phenomenon. The quiet that underlies all of reality is deeper, older, and more permanent than any sound ever made. You can rest in that quiet now, feeling it beneath the surface noise of your world, knowing it extends infinitely beyond, knowing it will persist long after the last vibration fades. Breathe slowly. Each breath moves through the medium that makes sound possible. But between breaths, in that brief pause, there's a moment of quiet that connects to the silence of space. Rest in those moments. Let them lengthen. Let the silence gather. Before we ascend into the silence of space, let us linger here on Earth for a while longer, paying attention to something we usually take entirely for granted, the soundscape that surrounds us constantly. The intricate tapestry of vibrations woven into every moment of our existence on this planet. Understanding what we're leaving behind, appreciating the richness of Earth's sound environment before we depart from it, makes the transition into silence more meaningful, more profound, more felt. Earth is a noisy planet, not noisy in the way we usually mean when we complain about noise, not unpleasantly loud or irritating, but noisy in the sense that sound is everywhere, always, an unbroken presence accompanying every moment of life on this world. From the deepest ocean trenches to the highest mountain peaks, from the densest tropical forests to the most barren deserts, sound exists. Something is always vibrating, always creating pressure waves, always filling the air or water with information encoded in rhythm and frequency. The study of these natural sound environments has a name: soundscape ecology. Researchers in this field have discovered that ecosystems don't just contain sounds, they organize them. Different species occupy different frequency bands, different times of day, different seasons, creating complex arrangements that minimize interference and maximize communication. The soundscape of a healthy ecosystem is structured, layered, rich with information. The soundscape of a degraded ecosystem is impoverished, simplified, stripped of complexity. Consider the dawn chorus, that explosion of birdsong that greets each morning in temperate regions around the world. This isn't random noise, it's a carefully timed, species-specific event where dozens or hundreds of bird species sing simultaneously, each occupying its own frequency range, each timing its contribution to the broader chorus with extraordinary precision. The dawn chorus begins before sunrise, often in a specific sequence, certain species singing first, others joining as light increases, the whole event lasting perhaps an hour before settling into the quieter soundscape of the full day. Why dawn? Several theories exist. The cool, still air of early morning carries sound more effectively than the warmer, more turbulent air of afternoon. The reduced ambient noise from other sources, insects, wind, water, makes each bird's song more audible, and the dawn represents a critical time for territory establishment and mate attraction, making vocal communication especially important. Whatever the reasons, the dawn chorus is one of Earth's most beautiful and complex natural sounds, a biological orchestra that has been performing the same general pattern for millions of years. The ocean contributes its own vast soundscape. Waves breaking on shores create the rhythmic crash and retreat that humans have found calming for as long as we've lived near coastlines. But beneath the surface, a world of sound exists that we rarely perceive. Whales communicate across thousands of miles of ocean using low-frequency sounds that travel with remarkable efficiency through water. Blue whales, the largest creatures ever to have lived, produce calls so low in frequency, around 20 hertz, at the very bottom of human hearing range. They can travel across entire ocean basins. These whale songs have changed over decades. Blue whale calls have been shifting lower in frequency since the 1960s, a trend documented by researchers across multiple ocean basins. The reason isn't entirely understood. It might be related to ocean warming, changes in prey distribution, or shifts in population dynamics. But whatever the cause, it demonstrates that Earth's natural soundscape isn't static. It evolves, responds to environmental changes, adapts over time. Beneath the waves, other sounds fill the water. Snapping shrimp create sounds loud enough to stun prey and deter predators. The snapping of their claws generates cavitation bubbles that collapse with tremendous force, producing sounds exceeding 200 decibels, louder than a jet engine at close range. Fish in certain species grunt, drum, and vocalize during spawning seasons. The creak and groan of shifting ocean currents, the rumble of underwater landslides, the distant percussion of earthquakes, all contribute to an underwater soundscape of extraordinary complexity. On land, insects create their own acoustic world. Cicadas produce sounds exceeding 100 decibels through vibrating membranes on their abdomens, loud enough to cause hearing damage with prolonged exposure. Crickets chirp by rubbing specialized structures on their wings together. The frequency of their chirping so reliably linked to temperature that scientists can estimate air temperature by counting chirps per minute. Frogs chorus at dusk and dawn, their calls overlapping and interweaving in patterns as complex as any bird song. Wind adds its own voice to the soundscape. Through trees, wind creates the rustling, whispering sound we find so soothing, the movement of leaves vibrating against each other and against the air. Through mountain passes, wind can howl and moan, creating sounds eerily reminiscent of voices. Across open plains, wind creates a low, constant drone. Each landscape has its own wind song, shaped by terrain, vegetation, and atmospheric conditions. Water in motion is among the most universally calming sounds humans experience. Rivers murmur and rush over rocks, waterfalls roar. Rain on rooftops creates a gentle, rhythmic percussion. Even the drip of water in a cave, slow, irregular, patient, has a quality that quiets the mind. These water sounds have been used deliberately for millennia to promote relaxation and sleep, from ancient Roman baths with their flowing fountains, to modern white noise machines mimicking rainfall. Human civilization has added enormously to Earth's soundscape, and much of what we've added is not pleasant. Traffic noise, industrial machinery, aircraft overhead, construction, music from countless sources, the constant buzz and beep of electronic devices. These sounds fill our environment continuously, particularly in urban areas. Research has consistently shown that this anthropogenic noise affects human health and well-being in measurable ways. Studies have documented that chronic exposure to traffic noise increases cortisol levels, the body's primary stress hormone, raises blood pressure, disrupts sleep architecture, and increases cardiovascular disease risk. Children exposed to chronic noise pollution show impaired cognitive development and reduced academic performance. Even wildlife responds negatively to human noise. Birds sing at higher frequencies in noisy urban environments to be heard above traffic, and many species avoid noise-polluted areas entirely. The quietest places on Earth offer a glimpse of what silence might feel like without actually achieving it. Antarctica, far from human civilization, has some of the quietest soundscapes on the planet, but even there, wind howls, ice creaks, and seabirds call. Deep ocean trenches, where water pressure crushes everything, still contain the rumble of Earth's geological processes and the distant sounds of whale communication. The quietest human-made space is an anechoic chamber, a room lined with sound-absorbing materials. designed to eliminate echoes and reflections. The most famous of these is at Orfield Laboratories in Minneapolis, which holds the Guinness record for the world's quietest room. Visitors to this room report that the silence becomes uncomfortable within minutes. Without external sound, the body's own sounds become prominent. The beating of the heart, the rushing of blood through veins, the sound of breathing. Some visitors find this unsettling, others find it profoundly peaceful. This reaction to silence reveals something about our relationship with sound. We evolved in noisy environments. The soundscape of ancient Earth was rich and complex, and our nervous systems developed to process and respond to constant auditory input. Sound carries information about safety and danger. The rustle in the bushes might be a predator. The approaching footsteps might be friend or foe. The distant rumble might be a storm. Our brains never fully stop monitoring the soundscape, even during sleep. Yet humans have also sought silence throughout history, recognizing its restorative properties even before understanding the neuroscience behind them. Monasteries and contemplative orders developed practices of silence, periods when monks or nuns would refrain from speaking entirely, sometimes for days. Buddhist meditation traditions emphasize quiet awareness, sitting in stillness and listening to the mind quieting itself. Native American vision quests involve days alone in wilderness, seeking the silence that comes when human activity stops, and the natural soundscape becomes the only presence. These traditions recognize something that modern research confirms: silence heals. Not the complete absence of all vibration that's impossible on Earth, but the deliberate reduction of stimulating sound, the creation of space where the mind can rest from the constant processing of auditory information. This quieting of the soundscape allows the nervous system to shift from its vigilant, monitoring state to something calmer, something more conducive to rest and restoration. Tonight, we're going to leave this soundscape behind entirely. Not the way sleep does it. Sleep doesn't truly silence the world. It simply reduces our awareness of it. We're going to ascend through the atmosphere, watch the soundscape thin and quiet and fade, and cross into a silence more complete than anything available on Earth. We're going to experience in imagination what true silence feels like. The silence that has existed since before Earth formed, that exists beyond our atmosphere right now, that will persist long after Earth's soundscape has quieted for the last time. But before we go, take a moment to appreciate what we're leaving. Listen to whatever sounds are present in your environment right now. The hum, the distant noise, the small vibrations of a world alive with sound. These sounds are part of Earth's story, part of the soundscape that has accompanied life for billions of years. They deserve appreciation, even as we prepare to leave them behind. Breathe slowly, listening. Then let the sounds begin, gradually, gently, to fade. We're going to start climbing soon. The silence is waiting for us above. Begin to rise. Not physically, not in any way that disturbs your comfortable rest, but in imagination. Let your awareness lift gently upward, away from the ground, away from the surface sounds, away from the world of vibration and noise. We're going to ascend together through Earth's atmosphere, and as we rise, we're going to pay close attention to what happens to sound. We're going to watch it fade, listen to it thin, feel it dissolve, until we cross the boundary where it disappears entirely and the silence of space begins. At ground level, sound is everywhere and everything. The air is dense, thick with molecules, perfectly suited to carrying vibration from source to ear. Every movement creates disturbance. Every disturbance creates waves. Every wave carries information outward in all directions, filling the environment with a constant tapestry of sound. This is the world you know, the world you've lived your entire life within. the only acoustic environment humans have ever naturally experienced, begin to rise, slowly, gently, like a balloon released from an open hand drifting upward on warm air. At first, nothing changes. The sounds below remain present: birdsong, wind, the distant hum of civilization. You're still well within the dense lower atmosphere, the troposphere, where weather happens and clouds form and the air remains thick enough to carry sound with perfect efficiency. Rise higher. 100 meters, 500, 1,000. You're climbing now, ascending through the air, and the air itself is beginning to change. It's thinning, becoming less dense, the molecules spacing themselves slightly farther apart as atmospheric pressure decreases with altitude. The sounds from below are beginning to soften, not because they're getting farther away, though they are, but because the medium carrying them is becoming less efficient at transmitting vibration at mountaintop altitudes, 3, 4, 5 kilometers above sea level. The change becomes noticeable. The air feels thinner, somehow lighter. Sounds carry differently here. Your own voice sounds strange, slightly different in quality. The ambient noise of the world below has quieted considerably. If you've ever stood on a high mountain peak in a calm, clear morning, you may have noticed this quality, a quietness that seems to pervade everything, a sense that the world has hushed itself. This isn't imagination. At high altitude, the atmosphere genuinely conducts sound less efficiently. The air density dropped significantly. At 5 kilometers altitude, it's roughly half what it is at sea level. Fewer molecules means fewer collisions, fewer opportunities for pressure waves to propagate, a gradual reduction in sound's ability to travel through the medium. The world doesn't go silent, but it quiets. The constant background hum of lower altitudes fades towards something approaching peace. Continue rising. 10 kilometers. 15. We're entering the stratosphere now, the second layer of the atmosphere, where the air has thinned dramatically. Commercial aircraft fly at these altitudes, and if you've ever looked out an airplane window at cruising altitude and imagined stepping outside, you've imagined stepping into something close to silence. The air at 10 kilometers is about a quarter as dense as at sea level. Sound can still propagate here, but barely, weakly, like a whisper trying to cross a vast empty room. The sounds of earth below have vanished entirely. The bird song, the wind, the traffic, the rain, all gone, left behind in the dense atmosphere where they belong. Up here there might be the faint vibration of the aircraft itself, the structural hum of metal and composite moving through thin air. But nothing from the world below reaches these altitudes. The soundscape has been replaced by something approaching quiet. Rise higher still. 20 kilometers. 30, 50. The stratosphere thins, gives way to the mesosphere, and the air becomes so sparse that calling it air seems generous. At 50 kilometers altitude, the atmospheric density is less than 1,000th of what it is at sea level. Sound propagation at these densities is negligible. Pressure waves cannot effectively transfer energy from molecule to molecule when the molecules are so far apart. We're approaching silence now. Not the approximate silence of a quiet room or an empty forest, but something more absolute, more complete. The transition hasn't been sudden, it's been gradual, a slow fading, a patient diminishment over dozens of kilometers of ascent. Sound has been leaving us the way color leaves the sky as night approaches, incrementally, almost imperceptibly, until one moment you realize the change is complete. At 100 kilometers altitude, we reach the Kármán line, the internationally recognized boundary of space, the altitude at which the atmosphere becomes so thin that it no longer functions as an atmosphere in any meaningful sense. Below this line, Earth. Above it, space. It's an arbitrary boundary in some sense. The atmosphere doesn't end sharply but fades gradually, but it marks a genuine transition. Below the Kármán line, sound is possible. Above it, sound is not. Cross it. Feel the last traces of atmosphere dissolve around you. Feel the medium that has carried sound for your entire life simply cease to exist, and feel what replaces it: nothing. Not the nothing of emptiness or void, but the nothing of absence. The absence of medium, the absence of vibration, the absence of any possibility that movement could create disturbance that could travel outward and be perceived. Silence. Perfect, absolute, eternal silence. The first humans to experience this transition, the astronauts of the early space programs, reported the experience in varied but consistently powerful terms. Some described it as peaceful, profoundly calming, a relief from the constant sensory stimulation of life on Earth. Others found it initially disorienting, even unsettling. The human mind evolved to process constant auditory input, sometimes struggles when that input suddenly disappears. Inside spacecraft, this struggle was recognized early. Engineers deliberately included sounds in the spacecraft environment. The hum of life support systems, the click of switches, the communication between crew members. These sounds weren't necessary for the spacecraft's function. They were there for the crew's psychological well-being, to prevent the complete silence of space from creating anxiety or disorientation. The spacecraft created an artificial soundscape, a bubble of familiar vibration within the vast quiet of the void. This reveals something important about the human relationship with silence. We need it. Our nervous systems crave the restoration it provides. Our minds benefit profoundly from periods of quiet. But we're also uncomfortable with it, at least initially, because our entire evolutionary history has been spent in noisy environments where silence might mean something was wrong, where the absence of expected sounds could signal danger. The resolution of this tension comes with time and understanding. Astronauts who spent extended periods in space, weeks or months aboard space stations, often reported that the initial discomfort faded, replaced by a deep appreciation for the quiet. Looking out windows at Earth below, seeing the blue sphere of the planet they'd left, knowing that all the noise they'd ever known existed only on that thin, atmosphered world, they often described a sense of profound peace. Float here now, in this space above the atmosphere, and let yourself aegis. Feel the silence around you, not as emptiness but as presence. It has a quality, a texture, almost a weight. It's the silence that has existed since before Earth formed, since before the solar system coalesced from gas and dust, since before the sun ignited. It's ancient beyond comprehension, and it's here, surrounding you, holding you in perfect quiet. Below you, Earth continues its business. The dawn chorus is singing somewhere. Waves are breaking on shores. Wind is rustling through forests. Whales are calling across oceans. All of it happening. All of it real. All of it completely and utterly inaudible from where you float now. The sounds exist, but they're confined to their medium, trapped in the atmosphere like music trapped inside a closed room. Step outside that room, rise above that atmosphere, and the music plays on, but you hear nothing. There's something liberating about this perspective. The noise that fills your days, that sometimes overwhelms your senses, that can keep you from the rest you need. It exists only within a thin shell surrounding the planet. A shell barely 100 kilometers thick, compared to Earth's radius of 6,400 kilometers. The noise is a surface phenomenon, a thin coating on a world, and beyond that coating stretches silence extending to the edges of the observable universe. You don't need to travel to space to benefit from this understanding. Simply knowing it, holding it in your awareness, can create a psychological distance from the noise of daily life. When sounds become overwhelming, when the world feels too loud, you can remember this noise exists only here, only in this thin layer of atmosphere, only in this brief moment. Beyond it, silence stretches forever. The quiet is always there, always waiting, always available to return to when the noise subsides. Rest now in the space above the atmosphere. Feel yourself floating in perfect quiet, the earth a beautiful blue sphere below, all its sounds invisible and inaudible from this vantage. The silence here is comfortable, peaceful, natural. It doesn't demand anything of you. It doesn't stimulate or challenge or require response. It simply exists, patient and eternal, holding you gently in its vast, quiet embrace. We'll remain here for a while, exploring what exists in this silence. The events, the phenomena, the cosmic drama that unfolds without a single vibration disturbing the peace. But for now, simply float, simply be quiet, simply experience what it feels like to exist beyond the reach of sound. Breathe. Though here, in the vacuum, breathing is imagined rather than real. Let the rhythm remain, the gentle in and out, the pace of a body at rest. Let the silence hold you. Let it quiet not just your ears but your mind, your thoughts, the inner noise that sometimes persists even when the outer world is still. The silence is here. Rest in it. Now that we float here in the silence of space, let us witness something remarkable. Let us watch the universe perform its most dramatic, its most energetic, its most violent acts, and let us experience them exactly as they occur in perfect, undisturbed, absolute quiet. This is one of the most profound paradoxes of cosmic existence, and contemplating it has a strange and unexpected effect on the mind. The violence, stripped of sound, stripped of the auditory drama that our brains associate with destruction and danger, becomes something else entirely. It becomes peaceful. It becomes beautiful. It becomes something to watch with calm appreciation rather than fear. Let us begin with the most dramatic single event the universe produces, the supernova. A supernova is the explosive death of a massive star, a star many times larger than our sun, which has burned through its nuclear fuel and can no longer sustain the outward pressure that has balanced gravity for millions or billions of years. In the final moments, the star's core collapses catastrophically, and the resulting shockwave tears the star apart, releasing more energy in seconds than our sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year lifetime. Close your eyes and imagine watching this event. You're positioned at a safe distance, far enough that the radiation and shock wave won't harm you, close enough that the light fills your field of vision with brilliance. The star before you swells, brightens, and then, in a moment of extraordinary visual drama, explodes. Light erupts outward in all directions. The stellar material, superheated and ionized, expands at thousands of kilometers per second, creating a shell of glowing gas that will eventually become a nebula, one of the most beautiful structures in the cosmos. And through all of this there is silence, not a whisper, not a rumble, not a single vibration disturbing the perfect quiet. The most energetic event you could possibly witness occurs in absolute, complete, undisturbed silence. The explosion is purely visual, a light show without soundtrack, a cosmic spectacle stripped entirely of auditory accompaniment. How does this silence change the experience? On Earth we associate explosions with tremendous noise, the crash and boom and roar that accompany destruction. These sounds trigger deep evolutionary responses in us. Heightened alertness, increased heart rate, the flood of adrenaline that prepares the body for fight or flight. Sound is the primary carrier of danger information in our evolutionary heritage. A loud explosion means something is happening, something potentially threatening, something demanding immediate attention and response. But here, watching the supernova in silence, none of these responses are triggered. The visual spectacle is magnificent, but without the accompanying sound, the brain doesn't register it as dangerous. It registers it as beautiful. The same event that would terrify us if accompanied by sound becomes something to contemplate with calm wonder when experienced in quiet. Silence has transformed violence into art. Move now through space to another event. Somewhere in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, two large asteroids are colliding. These are rocky bodies, perhaps hundreds of kilometers across, moving on slightly different orbital paths that have brought them into intersection. Over millions of years, gravitational perturbations have gradually altered their trajectories until, in this moment, they occupy the same point in space simultaneously. The collision is tremendous. Rock shatters. Fragments fly outward in all directions at kilometers per second. Dust clouds expand, catching sunlight and glowing. The kinetic energy of the collision converts to heat, light, and the sheer explosive force of two massive bodies meeting at high speed. From a distance, it would be a spectacular visual event, a flash of light, an expanding cloud of debris, the birth of countless smaller asteroids from the destruction of two larger ones. And there is no sound. The debris flies silently. The dust expands quietly. The heat radiates without vibration. Two worlds destroyed each other in perfect quiet, and the cosmos continues as if nothing happened, because in cosmic terms, nothing significant did happen. The silence absorbs the event without registering it, without drama, without narrative weight. Consider now a black hole merger. Two black holes, each perhaps tens of times the mass of our sun, spiraling closer together over millions of years as they lose energy through gravitational radiation. They orbit each other faster and faster as the distance between them shrinks, creating gravitational waves, ripples in the fabric of space-time itself, that carry energy away and pull them closer still. In the final moments before merger, the black holes orbit each other hundreds of times per second, so close that space-time itself is warped dramatically around them. And then they merge. Two regions of space-time collapse into one, releasing an enormous burst of gravitational energy. The gravitational waves from this event travel outward at the speed of light, detectable on Earth by extraordinarily sensitive instruments called LIGO and Virgo. But there is no sound. Gravitational waves are not sound waves. They don't require a medium. They're ripples in space-time itself. And while they share some mathematical properties with sound waves, they're fundamentally different phenomena. The merger of two black holes, one of the most energetic events in the universe, produces no vibration in any medium, no pressure wave, no audit, or signal of any kind. It happens in silence as deep and complete as the silence of the supernova, the silence of the asteroid collision, the silence of everything that occurs in space. Travel now to the sun itself. On its surface, storms are raging, magnetic storms of unimaginable scale, where magnetic field lines twist and reconnect, releasing enormous energies. Solar flares erupt, brightening regions of the solar surface by factors of thousands. Coronal mass ejections blast billions of tons of plasma outward into space at thousands of kilometers per second. Sunspots, regions of intense magnetic field, appear and disappear on the solar surface, dark patches in the roiling brightness. All of it silent. The sun, that enormous churning sphere of plasma, the source of all light and heat and life on Earth, produces no sound that can travel beyond its corona. The vibrations within the sun, and there are many, the sun actually oscillates in complex patterns that scientists study through a technique called helioseismology, are trapped within the solar atmosphere, unable to propagate into the vacuum of space. The sun burns in silence, roars without sound, churns without noise. Drift now toward Jupiter, that enormous gas giant, the largest planet in our solar system. Jupiter's storms are legendary. The Great Red Spot alone is a storm system larger than Earth that has been raging for at least 350 years, possibly much longer. The winds in Jupiter's atmosphere reach speeds of hundreds of kilometers per hour. Lightning flashes in Jupiter's cloud layers are thousands of times more powerful than Earth's lightning. The entire planet is a sphere of violent atmospheric activity, turbulent beyond anything our world experiences, and silent. Every storm, every lightning flash, every wind gust occurs in the silence of space. Jupiter has no solid surface, no ground for sound waves to travel along, and while sound can propagate through the dense atmosphere of the gas giant itself, that sound is trapped within the atmosphere, unable to escape into the vacuum surrounding the planet. The violence churns in quiet. The storms rage without sound, the lightning crackles without thunder. Now consider something even larger. Somewhere in the distant universe, two galaxies are colliding. Not quickly. Galaxy collisions take hundreds of millions of years to complete, but inexorably. Two vast collections of stars, gas, dust, and dark matter, each containing hundreds of billions of stars, are interpenetrating, their gravitational fields interacting, their stars being flung into new orbits by the tidal forces of the merger. Stars are being ejected into intergalactic space. Gas clouds are collapsing into new stars. The shapes of both galaxies are distorting, stretching, pulling apart, and reforming into new configurations. It's one of the most dramatic events in the universe, occurring on timescales of hundreds of millions of years, involving energies beyond human comprehension, and it happens in silence. Two galaxies merge without a whisper. Billions of stars rearrange themselves in perfect quiet. The cosmos reshapes itself without sound, without drama beyond the purely visual, without any vibration disturbing the vast silence that pervades intergalactic space. There is something profoundly liberating about witnessing these events in silence. Violence on Earth is accompanied by Noah's the crash, the roar, the scream, the bang. These sounds carry emotional weight, trigger fear responses, create psychological associations between destruction and danger. But in space, stripped of sound, the same events lose their emotional charge. They become processes. They become phenomena. They become things to observe with curiosity and wonder, rather than react to with fear. The universe destroys and creates constantly, simultaneously, in perfect quiet. Stars die and nebulae form. Galaxies collide and new star systems emerge from the wreckage. Black holes consume matter and radiate energy. All of it happening in silence. All of it proceeding without drama or narrative, without heroes or villains, without the emotional weight that sound would add. This realization offers a strange comfort. The universe is not hostile. It's not trying to destroy anything, not motivated by violence or malice. It simply is what it is. Matter and energy following physical laws, creating and destroying configurations, cycling through states of existence in endless transformation. The silence in which all this occurs reflects this indifference perfectly. Events happen because physics dictates they must, not because the universe intends them, not because they carry meaning beyond their physical causes and effects. Rest now in this understanding. The violence you've witnessed tonight, supernovae, collisions, mergers, storms, occurred without a single vibration disturbing the silence around you. You watched it all in perfect quiet, and it was beautiful rather than frightening, contemplative rather than anxiety-inducing. The silence transformed it, softened it, made it something to marvel at rather than something to fear. The same silence surrounds you now. The same quiet that held the supernova holds you. The same peace that pervaded the asteroid collision pervades this moment. You are floating in the same silence that has witnessed billions of years of cosmic events without being disturbed by a single one of them. Let this silence hold you. Let it quiet not just your ears, but your mind, your worries, your thoughts about tomorrow. The universe's most dramatic events don't disturb this silence. Surely your concerns, small and brief and temporary as they are against this cosmic backdrop, need not disturb it either. Breathe into the quiet. Feel the peace that exists when violence has no voice. Rest in the silence that has held galaxies and stars and planets through all their transformations, undisturbed and undisturbing, ancient and eternal and perfectly, profoundly still. We've been floating here in perfect silence, watching cosmic events unfold without vibration, without noise, without any auditory accompaniment whatsoever. And yet, something in the human mind resists this silence. Something in us wants to hear the universe, wants to experience space not just visually, but through all our senses, wants to fill the quiet with something, anything that might bridge the gap between what we see and what we feel. This impulse has given birth to a fascinating field of creative and scientific endeavor, the sonification of space. Sonification is the translation of data, scientific measurements, mathematical relationships, spatial information, into sound. It's not recording sound from space, because there is no sound from space to record. It's creating sound from information about space, converting the silent cosmos into something our ears can process and our minds can experience. NASA has been one of the most prolific creators of space sonification, producing dozens of audio pieces that translate the data from space telescopes, spacecraft, and ground-based observatories into haunting, otherworldly soundscapes. These pieces are both scientific tools and works of art, both educational resources and aesthetic experiences. They reveal aspects of the cosmos that might otherwise remain entirely invisible and entirely silent, giving them a presence in human experience that pure visual observation cannot provide. Consider the Hubble Deep Field Sonification, one of NASA's most celebrated audio translations. The Hubble Deep Field image, first captured in 1995, shows a tiny patch of sky, about 1/30th the size of the full moon, that contains thousands of galaxies, each one containing billions of stars. The image revealed the staggering density of the universe, the sheer number of galaxies packed into even the smallest regions of sky. To create the sonification, NASA mapped the positions of galaxies in the image to musical notes. Galaxies on the left side of the image correspond to lower notes, those on the right to higher notes. Brighter galaxies produce louder notes. The result is a piece of music that, when listened to, creates an auditory landscape of the cosmos, notes rising and falling, chords forming and dissolving, a melody emerging from the distribution of galaxies across space. This piece of music doesn't exist in nature. The galaxies don't sing, the cosmos doesn't compose, but the sonification reveals a pattern, a structure in the distribution of matter across the universe that becomes perceptible through sound in a way that might be difficult to grasp visually. Listening to the Hubble Deep Field Sonification, you can hear the clustering of galaxies, the voids between them, the large-scale structure of the universe expressed as rhythm and melody. Perhaps the most famous space sonification is the sound discovered in the Perseus galaxy cluster. In 2003, astronomers using the Chandra X-ray Observatory detected pressure waves in the hot gas surrounding a supermassive black hole at the center of the Perseus cluster, a group of galaxies about 240 million light-years from Earth. These pressure waves are, in a technical sense, sound waves, company, impressions and rarefactions propagating through a medium, the hot intergalactic gas. But this sound is utterly beyond human perception. The frequency of these pressure waves is about 1 million billion times lower than the lowest frequency humans can hear. If you could somehow hear it, it would be a B-flat, about 57 octaves below middle C, the deepest note in the universe, so low that the sound wave completes one cycle every 10 million years. It's a note that has been sounding for billions of years, produced by the churning activity of the black hole at the cluster's center. NASA translated this signal up in frequency to something human ears could detect, creating an eerie, droning tone that captures something of the cosmic scale and patience of the original signal. Listening to it evokes feelings of vastness, of time scales beyond comprehension, of processes operating at rhythms so slow that human lifetimes are less than a single vibration. Saturn has provided some of the most beautiful space sonifications. The Cassini spacecraft, which orbited Saturn from 2004 to 2017, detected radio emissions from the planet, electromagnetic signals produced by charged particles interacting with Saturn's magnetic field. These radio emissions aren't sound, but they have a rhythm, a pattern, a structure that translates beautifully into audio. NASA converted these radio emissions into audio, and the result is genuinely haunting, an eerie, shifting soundscape that seems to breathe and pulse, rising and falling in ways that feel almost organic, almost alive. The sounds have been described as ghostly, otherworldly, dreamlike. They bear no resemblance to anything you'd hear on Earth. Creating an auditory experience that genuinely transports the listener to another world. Jupiter has provided similarly otherworldly sounds. The Voyager spacecraft, passing Jupiter in 1979, recorded radio emissions from the planet's magnetosphere, electromagnetic signals created by the interaction between Jupiter's powerful magnetic field and the solar wind and the charged particles from its volcanic moon Io. These emissions, when converted to audio, create sounds that range from eerie whistles to deep rumbling drones, a soundscape that seems to belong to some alien environment utterly unlike anything in human experience. More recently, NASA has sonified data from the James Webb Space Telescope, creating audio translations of some of the most distant and ancient objects ever observed. The pillars of creation, those magnificent columns of gas and dust in the Eagle Nebula where new stars are forming, have been translated into a piece of music that captures the structure and beauty of the nebula in sound. Each pillar, each region of gas, each newly forming star contributes its own element to the composition. These sonifications serve multiple purposes. Educationally, they make complex astronomical data accessible in new ways. A sonification can reveal patterns and structures that might be difficult to perceive visually, translating spatial relationships into temporal relationships that our auditory processing systems can grasp. Scientists have actually used sonification as a tool for data analysis, listening for patterns in astronomical data that might be missed through visual inspection alone. Aesthetically, sonifications create art from science, beauty from data, experience from information. They bridge the gap between the human desire to experience the cosmos with all our senses and the physical reality that the cosmos is silent beyond our atmosphere. They don't pretend to capture real cosmic sounds. They're transparent about being translations, interpretations, artistic renderings of scientific data. But within that honesty, they create genuine aesthetic experiences of remarkable power. Psychologically, space sonifications occupy an interesting space between music and ambient sound. They're not music in the traditional sense. They don't follow conventional melodic or harmonic structures, don't have verses or choruses or resolutions. They're more like soundscapes, environments created from sound, spaces you can enter and explore with your ears. Many people find them deeply calming, conducive to meditation or relaxation, precisely because they're so different from the sounds of daily life. There's something worth contemplating in the human impulse behind sonification. We encounter silence, vast, absolute, eternal silence, and our response is not to simply accept it, but to translate it, to fill it with sound, to make the silent cosmos speak. This says something about us. It says we're creatures of sound, creatures who process the world partly through vibration, creatures for whom silence, however peaceful, feels incomplete without some auditory presence, and yet the translation itself highlights the silence it attempts to fill. Every sonification is, in a sense, a reminder that the original is silent. Every piece of music created from space data draws attention to the fact that no music exists in space itself, that the sounds we're hearing are purely human creations, our attempt to bridge an unbridgeable gap between our sensory world and the quiet cosmos. The Perseus cluster's B-flat note has been sounding for billions of years in the intergalactic gas, but no ear has ever heard it and no ear ever will. The frequency is too low, the medium too thin, the distance too vast. We can only know it exists through mathematical inference, and we can only experience something like it through the translation that sonification provides. The note plays on in silence, heard by no one, appreciated only by those who understand what the data represents. This is perhaps the deepest lesson of space sonification, that the universe contains patterns, structures, rhythms, things that share properties with sound without being sound, that we can discover and translate but never directly perceive. The cosmos has its own music in a metaphorical sense, but it plays in a medium we cannot access, at frequencies we cannot detect, in spaces we cannot visit. Sonification lets us glimpse this music, hear echoes of it, experience approximations of it, but always beneath the translated sounds, beneath the haunting melodies and eerie drones and cosmic compositions, the silence remains. The silence is deeper than any sonification, older than any translation, more fundamental than any sound we could create from cosmic data. The sonifications are beautiful and they serve us well, but they're temporary. They exist only when we choose to listen, only when we activate the translation, only when we bridge the gap between human senses and cosmic reality. Turn off the sonification. Let the translated sounds fade. What remains is what has always been there. What will always be there, what existed before the first star ignited and will persist after the last star dies. Silence. Pure, complete, eternal silence. Rest in that silence now. Let the beautiful sounds of space sonification, the Perseus note, Saturn's ghostly radio, Jupiter's magnetospheric whispers, fade into memory. They were lovely visitors, temporary guests in the cosmic quiet, but they don't belong here. Here belongs to silence alone. Breathe slowly, feeling the quiet settle back into place around you. The universe doesn't need our translations. It doesn't need our sounds. It exists perfectly well without them, has existed for 13.8 billion years without a single vibration disturbing its vast and patient quiet. Let yourself exist in that quiet too, releasing the need to fill silence with sound, releasing the impulse to translate and interpret and experience, simply being present in the deep and ancient peace. The cosmos is silent. It has always been silent. Rest in that silence and let it rest in you. We've traveled far tonight from the noisy surface of Earth through the quieting atmosphere into the perfect silence of space, witnessed cosmic violence without sound, heard humanity's beautiful attempts to translate that silence into music. Now let us return gently to the human mind. Let us explore what silence does to us, not philosophically or poetically, but scientifically, measurably, demonstrably. Let us understand why silence heals, why quiet restores, why the absence of sound has such profound effects on the body and mind that researchers have devoted careers to studying it. The human nervous system exists in two primary states, governed by two branches of the autonomic nervous system, the part that controls bodily functions we don't consciously direct. The sympathetic nervous system activates in response to perceived threats or demands, triggering the well-known fight-or-flight response. Heart rate increases, blood pressure rises, muscles tense, stress hormones flood the bloodstream, senses sharpen. This response evolved to help our ancestors survive encounters with predators or navigate dangerous situations quickly and effectively. The parasympathetic nervous system does the opposite. It activates during periods of safety and rest, slowing the heart, lowering blood pressure, relaxing muscles, promoting digestion, facilitating sleep. Scientists sometimes call this the rest and digest response, and it's the state in which the body does its deepest healing, its most effective restoration, its most fundamental maintenance and repair. Sound, particularly unpredictable, uncontrollable sound, tends to activate the sympathetic nervous system. Every new sound the brain processes must be evaluated. Is this dangerous? Does it require response? This evaluation happens automatically, below conscious awareness, but it still requires neural resources and creates a low-level state of alertness. In noisy environments, this evaluation happens constantly, keeping the nervous system in a state of mild but persistent activation that prevents full relaxation and deep rest. Silence, by contrast, allows the parasympathetic nervous system to take over. Without constant auditory input demanding evaluation and response, the brain can shift into its resting state more completely, more deeply, more effectively than it can in noisy environments. The body lows the mind's lead, heart rate slows, blood pressure drops, muscles release their chronic tension, and the deep physiological restoration that sleep and rest require becomes possible. A landmark study published in 2013 in the Journal of Environmental Psychology demonstrated this effect with remarkable clarity. Researchers compared the effects of 2 minutes of silence per day with listening to calming music, specifically a piece called Road to Zion's Ladder that had previously been shown to reduce stress. The expectation was that the calming music would produce significant relaxation effects. The surprise was that 2 minutes of silence produced even greater effects. Participants who experienced 2 minutes of silence showed measurably lower blood pressure and significantly slower heart rates compared to those who listened to the calming music. The silence group also showed lower levels of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, in subsequent measurements. 2 minutes, just 120 seconds of quiet, enough time to make a meaningful, measurable difference in the body's stress response. Why would silence outperform calming music? The researchers theorized that silence provided something music couldn't, the complete absence of auditory processing demands. Even calming music requires the brain to process sound, to decode frequencies, identify patterns, predict melodic progressions. This processing, while pleasant and even relaxing, still engages neural circuits in ways that silence does not. Silence asks nothing of the brain. It demands no processing, no evaluation, no response. It simply allows the mind to rest. The brain in silence doesn't go blank or PTOI, however. Research using functional MRI, brain imaging technology that tracks blood flow and neural activity, has revealed that silence activates a specific network of brain regions called the default mode network. This network becomes active precisely when external stimulation decreases, and it's involved in some of the mind's most important functions: self-reflection, memory consolidation, creative thinking, future planning, and the integration of experiences into coherent understanding. The default mode network is, in a sense, the brain's resting state activity, what the mind does when it's not actively engaged with the external world. Far from being idle or wasted time, default mode network activity is crucial for psychological health and cognitive function, and silence is one of the most effective ways to activate it, to give the mind the space it needs to engage in these essential internal processes. Sensory deprivation research has explored silence's effects even more intensively. Flotation tanks, also called isolation tanks or float tanks, are enclosed chambers filled with water saturated with Epsom salt, allowing the body to float effortlessly. The water is heated to skin temperature, and the tank is completely dark and completely silent. In these conditions, the brain receives almost no external sensory input, creating an environment of radical quiet. Research on flotation therapy has documented remarkable effects. Participants report significant reductions in anxiety, depression, and chronic pain after sessions in flotation tanks. Blood pressure decreases, heart rate slows, muscle tension releases. Creativity increases. Many participants report novel insights and creative breakthroughs emerging during or after sessions. Sleep quality improves for days following a session. The effects are consistent across studies, suggesting that the removal of sensory input, particularly sound, has genuine therapeutic value. Some participants find the initial experience of total silence uncomfortable. The human brain, deprived of its constant stream of external input, initially responds with something like alarm, a feeling of wrongness, of incompleteness, of missing something essential. This discomfort typically fades within 15 to 20 minutes as the nervous system adjusts to the new environment. And once it fades, what replaces it is often described as profound peace, a quality of quiet that participants struggle to articulate but consistently identify as deeply restorative. Ancient wisdom traditions recognized the healing power of silence long before neuroscience could measure it. Buddhist meditation practices, some of the oldest contemplative traditions in the world, emphasize sitting in quiet awareness, reducing external stimulation to allow the mind to settle naturally. The Buddha himself reportedly spent long periods in silence, and many Buddhist monasteries maintain periods of enforced silence, sometimes lasting days or weeks. As a spiritual practice, Christian contemplative orders developed similar traditions independently. The Benedictine monks, following the rule of Saint Benedict established in the 6th century CE, incorporated significant periods of silence into their daily routine. The Trappist order, formerly known as the Order of Cistercians of the Strict Observance, is famous for their vow of silence, a commitment to minimal speech that has been maintained for centuries. These monks report that silence isn't experienced as deprivation but as richness, as a space in which inner life deepens and spiritual awareness grows. Native American traditions included vision quests, periods spent alone in wilderness, typically lasting 4 days, during which the participant fasted and remained in quiet contemplation. The silence of these quests wasn't mere absence of human conversation, but a deliberate immersion in the natural soundscape, a quieting of the human mind to allow deeper perception and insight. Many who undertook vision quests reported profound psychological and spiritual experiences emerging from the combination of silence, solitude, and connection with the natural world. The relationship between silence and sleep deserves particular attention, given that sleep is the ultimate form of rest and restoration. Sleep research has consistently shown that environmental noise disrupts sleep quality even when it doesn't fully wake the sleeper. Traffic noise, aircraft noise, and other environmental sounds have been shown to reduce slow-wave sleep, the deepest and most restorative phase of the sleep cycle, and increase periods of lighter sleep where the brain remains partially vigilant. The mechanism is the same we discussed earlier. The brain continues processing sound during sleep, evaluating each new sound for potential threat. This processing consumes neural resources and prevents the brain from achieving its deepest resting states. In quieter environments, sleep becomes deeper, more continuous, more restorative. The body repairs more effectively. The mind consolidates memories more efficiently. The entire system recovers more completely from the demands of waking life. This is why the concept of white noise has become popular as a sleep aid. The idea being that a constant, unchanging sound masks the unpredictable sounds of the environment reducing the brain's need to evaluate each new sound individually. White noise machines and apps have become common sleep aids in noisy environments, but research suggests that true silence, or as close to it as possible, remains superior to white noise for sleep quality. The masking sound still requires some neural processing. Silence requires none. Contemplating cosmic silence, the silence of space that we have been exploring tonight, adds another dimension to silence's healing effects. It's not just the absence of sound in your immediate environment. It's the understanding that silence is the fundamental state of the universe, that it extends beyond your walls in all directions, that it has persisted for billions of years and will persist for billions more. This perspective creates what psychologists might call cognitive spaciousness, a sense of mental room, of freedom from the cramped, noisy, demanding environment of daily life. When you understand that silence is not empty but full of cosmic processes, full of ancient history, full of the quiet patience of stars and galaxies and the vast spaces between them, the experience of being quiet changes. It becomes not an absence but a presence, not a lack but a richness, not emptiness but connection to something vast and ancient and peaceful beyond human comprehension. Rest now in this understanding. Feel the silence around you. Whatever silence exists in your current environment, however imperfect, and know that it connects to something deeper. The quiet between sounds in your room connects to the quiet between planets. The stillness you feel when noise subsides connects to the stillness that pervades intergalactic space. You are not isolated in your quiet. You are participating in the universe's deepest and most fundamental state. Let your nervous system respond to this silence as it's designed to respond. Feel the sympathetic activation of the day, the stress, the vigilance, the constant evaluation of sounds and demands begin to release. Feel the parasympathetic state emerging, the body shifting into its resting mode, the heart slowing, the muscles releasing, the mind quieting. This is what silence does. This is what it has always done. This is what it will always do, for any creature evolved enough to perceive it and benefit from it. You are such a creature. Rest in the quiet now, and let it heal you, as it has healed countless beings before you and will heal countless beings after. Breathe slowly. Each breath moves through the silence. Each pause between breaths is a tiny window into the cosmic quiet. Rest in those pauses. Let them lengthen. Let the silence do its ancient, patient, healing work. We arrive now at the end of our journey through silence, not an ending that feels like conclusion, but one that feels like arrival, like finally reaching a place we've been moving toward all along, a place that has always existed and always will, a place where rest is not something we seek, but something we simply allow. Let us settle here, in the deepest quiet the universe has to offer, and contemplate what silence truly means on the largest possible scale. Before the universe began, before the Big Bang, before matter existed, before space and time themselves took their current form, there was silence. Not the silence of an empty room or a quiet forest or even the vacuum of space as we know it. A silence more fundamental than any of these, a silence that predates the very concepts of sound and vibration, because it predates the existence of anything that could vibrate. This is the original quiet, the silence from which everything emerged, the state that existed before existence itself began. The Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago, was the first moment when something could have made sound, the first moment when matter existed, when vibration became possible, when the universe gained the capacity to be noisy. And indeed, in the first moments after the Big Bang, the universe was a dense, hot, opaque plasma in which pressure waves propagated, waves that cosmologists have actually detected as tiny temperature fluctuations in the cosmic microwave background radiation, the afterglow of the Big Bang itself. These primordial sound waves, the oldest sound in the universe, created in the first fraction of a second after the Big Bang, have been studied extensively by cosmologists. They reveal information about the composition and structure of the early universe, helping us understand how the cosmos developed from uniform density to the complex galaxy-filled structure we observe today. In a very real sense, the universe began with sound, with vibration, with the first pressure waves propagating through the primordial plasma. But this sound was brief, cosmically speaking. As the universe expanded and cooled, the plasma thinned, became transparent, and the sound waves could no longer propagate effectively. Within a few 100,000 years of the Big Bang, an instant compared to the universe's current age, the conditions for sound ceased to exist in most of space. The universe fell quiet, and it has remained quiet ever since, in the vast spaces between the rare pockets of matter where sound can briefly exist. Think about the proportion of the universe that has ever contained sound versus the proportion that has always been silent. The matter that makes up stars, planets, atmospheres, and everything else, everything capable of vibrating, everything that could potentially produce or transmit sound, constitutes only about 5% of the universe's total energy content. The rest is dark matter and dark energy, neither of which interacts with sound, neither of which vibrates or transmits pressure waves. And even within that 5% of ordinary matter, sound exists only in extraordinarily small regions. Atmospheres are thin shells around planets. Planetary interiors might conduct vibration, but they're isolated points in vast empty space. The oceans of Earth, the densest medium through which sound travels on our world, are a thin film on one small planet orbiting one ordinary star among hundreds of billions in one galaxy among trillions. Sound is vanishingly rare in the universe. Silence is overwhelmingly dominant. The quiet we've been exploring tonight isn't an anomaly or an exception. It's the norm, the default, the state that pervades the overwhelming majority of all space and all time. Sound is the anomaly. Vibration is the interruption. Noise is the brief, local, temporary deviation from the universe's fundamental quiet. Understanding this proportion, truly feeling it, not just intellectually acknowledging it, changes your relationship with silence. Silence isn't something you have to seek or create or protect. It's something that already exists, everywhere in vast abundance, requiring nothing from you to maintain. It's the background against which all sound plays, the canvas on which all vibration paints, the ocean in which all noise is a single brief tiny ripple. The universe will eventually return to silence, completely and permanently. As the cosmos continues expanding, the stars will eventually exhaust their fuel. The last stars to burn will be the smallest red dwarfs, which can shine for trillions of years, far longer than the current age of the universe. But even they will eventually die, their fuel spent, their light extinguished. When the last star goes dark, the universe will be filled with cold, dead remnants, white dwarfs, neutron stars, black holes, drifting apart in an ever-expanding void. No atmosphere will exist to carry sound. No medium will remain through which vibration could propagate. The universe will fall silent for the final time, returning to the quiet from which it emerged, completing a journey from silence through sound and back to silence that spans the entire history of existence. This is sometimes called the heat death of the universe, the state of maximum entropy, maximum disorder, minimum available energy. Everything will have dispersed, everything will have cooled, everything will have reached equilibrium. And in that equilibrium there will be perfect, eternal, unbroken silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of completion, of a universe that has finished its work, that has exhausted its capacity for change, that rests in final absolute quiet. There's something deeply peaceful about this vision. if you allow it to be peaceful rather than frightening. The universe began in silence. It will end in silence. In between, in this brief, brilliant, noisy interval, matter organized itself into stars and planets and atmospheres and life and consciousness and everything we know. Sound existed, beauty existed, experience existed, and all of it was temporary, all of it was brief, all of it was a parenthetical interruption in the eternal quiet. You are part of that interruption, your life, your thoughts, your sounds, your vibrations. All of it exists within the parentheses between the silences. And there's no tragedy in this. The parenthetical statement has value precisely because it's parenthetical. The music has meaning precisely because it exists against silence, precisely because it emerged from quiet and will return to quiet. Without the silence before and after, the sound would have no context, no contrast, no significance. Between galaxies, right now, as you rest, silence stretches in all directions for millions of light years. The intergalactic medium, the space between galaxies, is the quietest environment in the universe, containing perhaps 1 atom per cubic meter, so sparse that the concept of sound becomes meaningless. This silence has persisted since the early universe, will persist until the universe itself ceases to exist, and represents the truest expression of cosmic quiet. Imagine yourself floating in this intergalactic silence. No spacecraft. There is no spacecraft here, no mechanical hum, no life. Support systems creating artificial sound, simply floating, existing, present in the quiet between galaxies. Distant galaxies visible in all directions, tiny smudges of light, each containing billions of stars, each separated from you by millions of light years of perfect silence. No sound reaches you from those galaxies, not because the sound is too far away to travel. Sound doesn't travel at all through this medium, whatever happens in those distant galaxies, however violently their stars burn or explode or merge. The silence between you and them remains undisturbed. You are held in quiet as complete as any quiet that has ever existed or ever will exist. And in this quiet, something remarkable happens to the mind. The constant low-level vigilance that characterizes waking consciousness, the background monitoring, the evaluation of stimuli, the readiness to respond, begins to dissolve. There is nothing to monitor here, nothing to evaluate, nothing that requires response. The mind, finding nothing to do, begins to rest in a way that is difficult to achieve in any environment on earth. This is the state that meditation traditions have sought for millennia. Not the absence of thought, but the absence of demand, the release from the constant need to process and respond and evaluate. In the intergalactic silence, this release happens naturally, inevitably, because the environment provides no input that requires processing. The mind simply quiets, the way water quiets when you stop stirring it, the way a bell quiets after the last vibration fades. The silence between your thoughts is connected to this cosmic quiet. Each pause in the mental chatter, each moment when the mind rests between one thought and the next, is a tiny window into the silence that pervades the universe. These moments are usually so brief we don't notice them. The mind fills them quickly with the next thought, the next worry, the next plan. But they're there, constant and reliable, and they connect you to something vast. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, notice these moments of quiet between thoughts. Don't try to extend them or hold them or make them last longer than they naturally do. Simply notice them. Feel how they connect to the silence we've been exploring, the silence of space, the silence between galaxies, the silence that existed before the universe began and will exist after it ends. You are a temporary arrangement of matter in a universe that is mostly silence, your sounds, your vibrations, your noises, all of them brief, all of them local, all of them existing within a thin atmosphere on a small planet in an ordinary solar system. Beyond your atmosphere, silence stretches in all directions. Before your birth, silence existed. After your death, silence will continue. And within your life, in the spaces between sounds, in the pauses between thoughts, silence is always present, always available, always waiting to be noticed and appreciated and rested in. This isn't a sad perspective. It's a peaceful one. The silence doesn't diminish your life or your sounds or your vibrations. It gives them context. It gives them meaning. It makes them precious precisely because they exist against such a vast and ancient and patient quiet. Your sounds matter because silence surrounds them. Your life matters because silence precedes and follows it. Your experience matters because it occurs in the brief, brilliant parenthetical interruption between eternities of quiet. Rest now in the silence, not the approximate silence of your room, though that too has value. Rest in the deeper silence, the silence you now understand, the silence that pervades the cosmos, the silence that has existed for billions of years and will exist for billions more. Let this understanding settle into your bones, into your cells, into the deepest parts of your awareness. Feel your nervous system releasing its last traces of vigilance. Feel your heart slowing, your muscles softening, your breath deepening. Feel the parasympathetic state emerging fully, the body shifting into its most profound resting mode, the mind quieting as completely as it can while consciousness still persists. You are floating now, in imagination, in the intergalactic silence. Galaxies glow faintly in all directions. No sound exists. No sound will exist here for as long as the universe continues expanding. The quiet is perfect, eternal, and deeply, profoundly peaceful. Let sleep come the way silence fills space, naturally, inevitably, without effort or force. Sleep doesn't need to be pursued or achieved or earned. Like silence, it simply exists, waiting for the conditions that allow it to be present. And those conditions are here now. Quiet, stillness, release, the gentle surrender of a mind that has traveled far tonight and is ready to rest. Breathe one more time, slowly, feeling the silence on either side of the breath, the quiet before the inhalation, the quiet after the exhalation. These tiny silences are doorways into the cosmic quiet we've been exploring. Step through them now, gently, as you drift from walkie NG into dreaming. The universe is silent. It has always been silent. It will always be silent. And in that silence there is peace beyond anything sound could ever provide. Rest now. Sleep. Let the silence hold you, as it holds the stars, as it holds the galaxies, as it holds everything that has ever existed or ever will exist. Let it hold you gently, patiently, eternally. Good night.